Hey guys, Brutal here. You are watching episode 10 of Brutally Honest, a WoW podcast. We've got Zorthas, Tettles, Xyronic this week. Great group of guys who are clearly able and willing to talk about the high-end level of PvE in WoW. Sit back and enjoy the show. I mean, what more is there to say? Make sure you go follow these guys. Make sure you go subscribe to them. Go show them some love. You'll find a bunch of stuff in the YouTube description below, including linking to a couple of different videos that we talk about during the episode. So, man, just go have fun. I'll see you on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 10. Took last week off because of real life and all that fun stuff, but we are back and we have ourselves today quite a show. It is a new year, and while we may be a little less than 2 months out from midnight, this feels like one of those moments where WoW can probably meaningfully evolve if it's in the right hands and if things are pointed in the right direction. But it's anyone's guess at this point in time, considering we're still in the midst of beta and the game has not launched yet. But we're going to sit down today with these guys. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We're going to be talking about what midnight actually might be marking in terms of a new era and whatnot. But we're going to go ahead and start off with Zorthas down there in the corner. Thank you guys for being here today. And Zorthas, if you could take just a moment, tell everyone who you are, what your relationship with high-end WoW might look like at the moment, and how closely you've been watching or playing the Midnight. Just introduce yourself. Take it away, man.
Hello, I'm Zorthas. I've been around the last year. I play a lot of beta and PTR, and make a lot of content for beta and PTR. I also do raid lead the top Oceanic guild, and I do a lot of M+ on live. I was in the top group in season 1. Haven't really been doing so much in season 2 and 3. I've kind of been like experiencing the pug scene more around that time.
Yeah, I'm exclusively a pugger, for better or for worse, so I understand where you're coming from. Well, thank you for being here, man. Real quick, as I say at the start of every show, everyone's name underneath their webcam. That's where you can find them on Twitch. You can also find all their links to YouTube, Twitter, etc. in the YouTube description below, and blah blah blah. You know the drill. Not Zorthas, sorry. Tettles, what's up, man? Thanks for being here. Please tell us who you are. Not that people don't know who you guys are, but nevertheless, tell people who you are, what's going on, and what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing World of Warcraft and Warlords of Draenor. Legion came out, got really addicted to Mythic Plus. Eventually got the opportunity to cast both the MDI and the Race World first. So I do that pretty regularly. Then I just create random miscellaneous content based on things that I kind of enjoy in WoW. You know, kind of similar to Zorthas in the sense that I raid and push high keys. Maybe I don't push as high or raid as well as he does. He's a bit better than me in both of those aspects. But I try my best, and I get the rank 1 title occasionally. I get Hall of Fame in my guild as well. So yeah, I test the beta as well. So I do have some insights as to what's going on, at least with some of the stuff that's going on in Midnight.
Fun fact, I just learned this about both these guys, but Tettles and Zorthas both started playing WoW in WoD. Is that correct, gentlemen? I just want to make sure I'm not misspeaking.
Yeah.
Oh. Really? Yes, we both did. Holy moly, that's crazy.
Fancy stuff, man. How did it feel, real quick? This is not on the script here, but how did it feel transitioning from WoD to Legion? Was that like just a huge eye-opening experience going from that kind of an expansion to Legion?
I don't know. I didn't really understand the people who hated Warlords. I don't know if Zorthas feels similarly, but I was so new that I just enjoyed flying around and doing like random stuff.
Yeah.
I was still at the point where I was trying to guild hop really aggressively, try to get into a lot better guilds, and so I wasn't really too worried about there being a bunch of dead content or anything like that. And then Legion came out, and it wasn't like, there was a lot different, but it didn't feel like it was like, oh, this is the craziest thing I've ever experienced.
When I played WoD, I was 14. I didn't play Legion. I was busy graduating high school.
That's incredible. Well, Xyronic, thank you for being here, man. I don't know how long you've been playing, but I assume it was before WoD. But tell people who you are and what you got going on, man.
It was a little bit.
Don't laugh. That wasn't an insult. I'm just saying. I feel like he's been around a lot longer.
It wasn't that much longer. I started in Cataclysm, so I wasn't.
Okay.
I'm not like a classic player. I don't have the rose-tinted glasses. But yeah, I'm Xyronic. I raided Race to World first in guilds such as Blood Legion and Limit, now Liquid, for the better part of 10 years. And since I retired from World First raiding, I've been casting things like the Race to World first and an MDI with the Moonkin up there. for the past 5 or 6 years. So it's been really fun.
Well, thank you for being here, man. I really do appreciate you guys. I've been playing WoW a long time. In fact, hold on, let me take a sip of my coffee real quick. I've been playing MMOs for quite a while. For those of you who are just listening, I just held up my EverQuest coffee mug, but nevertheless, we're not here to
It's
talk
like
about
that JB talks about, right? Like, that's...
Listen, this could be an EverQuest podcast or a WoW podcast, and I assure you don't want it to be the former because I will be the only one talking. But again, you guys are awesome for being here. Zorthas, I want to jump to you real quick. When you look at Midnight right now, what is one thing that makes you think this expansion is going to be a little bit different, for better or for worse? And caveat, little asterisk, whatever you want to call it, combat add-ons can't be your answer. That's not allowed. But what's one thing that might be a little bit different?
And the real answer is housing. I don't think like there's class changes, but I think in like the grand scheme of WoW, I don't think it's gonna be that of a much of an impact. Like, yeah, it is gonna be a big impact, but I don't think classes being different is a new thing. Dungeon design is different, I would say, but at the same time, yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a new thing. I think like the only thing that's like gonna be like echoed in time is probably housing, in my eyes, in this expansion.
Yeah, just jumping in on that a little bit as well. I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Orthus, but I feel like the game, like War Within, there was kind of a point in Dragonflight where the War Within kind of felt the same as Dragonflight, and so far I felt like Midnight is going to be, it's feeling very samey. Obviously, there is housing and there's stuff with the add-ons, but I think in terms of gameplay, it feels very similar. Yeah, that's like what I've experienced, at least for the beta.
Yeah, I do think it is like it's not like a massive reinvention of the wheel. Some people kind of are making it out to be with the whole class thing, but I think we'll just get into Midnight and we'll just be playing WoW.
I mean, real quick to kind of piggyback off of what both of you guys are saying, do you think that's good, bad, or even further than that, intentional, considering it is the World Soul Saga? Like, it's meant to be this all-encompassing storyline and kind of the look and feel of everything?
Well, I think it's I think maybe it is intentional that these 3 expansions are like a little similar. I think it's also kind of just a byproduct of like not adding massive borrowed power systems like Covenants anymore.
I think that's a very fair take. Xyronic, what about you? What do you think is going to be looking or feeling or just playing differently with Midnight compared to the War Within? Other than combat add-ons, need I remind you?
Sure. I didn't really have much to say there because I feel like both of them are pretty dead on. I don't think the gameplay itself is going to change that much. It's just how you interact with the game itself through either your UI or maybe some of the new things that they're adding to the game outside of raiding, like the hunt system. Maybe that's a way to get extra gear outside of raiding and Mythic Plus. But realistically, the gameplay shouldn't change that much.
Good deal. Thank you guys for taking a moment to answer that. We're going to go ahead and jump into our first big topic in regards to class design and pruning. But before we get there, real quick to chat, if you guys have any kinds of questions out there, you can send them into Twitch chat. We got mods that'll capture it. I'll probably see most of them. If we have time, we will get to them during the episode or at the end of the episode, but you are more than welcome to throw in questions whenever you see fit. You can either ask, a generic question or a question to a specific guest, and like I said, we'll do our best to get to it. Also, for you guys, the 3 guests, much like Mr. Tettles did, good job, sir. If you agree or disagree with something, or if you just want to add on to something or ask for clarification, please feel free to just talk. You don't need my prompting. Don't wait for me. I want this to be your show more than mine. I just want to kind of sit back and relax, and you guys feel free to take the wheel. But let's go ahead and swap gears here to topic 1. Mr. Zorthas, Blizzard has framed Midnight as a bit of a tightening for class identity. Less bloat, stronger core, etc., etc. From your perspective, especially as a raid leader and someone who plays historically a volatile spec-like enhancement, does this feel like a confident long-term vision, or more like Blizzard's correcting past overreach? And how does this change influence how you approach building and leading a roster?
But it is definitely a long-term vision. I think the overreach thing is like a per case basis, and I mean they can both exist, right? It can be a long-term vision, and they could be overreaching things potentially. I don't know. I think it is a good idea to make specs more rudimental and less less like you need a million modifiers to make a spell good. I think that's a good idea, but maybe the way that they're doing it for some classes isn't really too great. But I also don't think it really matters in terms of like having a roster or anything. I don't think people are gonna like not play a class or something. Maybe like a launch if some class is like really bad, but I think like in the end, a few months in, all classes will just be classes, and they'll do reworks over the expansion. In the long term, I think it's going to end up fine. Maybe short term, maybe a few issues.
Is there anything you're worried about from a raid leading standpoint that you might be facing now that you haven't faced in recent years?
Not really from my perspective. I mean, potentially if like a lower end guild has people that are like really overreacting to these changes, because there are some people in the community who are overreacting to the changes, right? Like someone might be playing a class that has everyone's like saying, oh, it's like really bad in Midnight. They made it too easy, and then like your raiders will like re-roll or something. I can see that being an issue in like lower end guilds.
That
right?
sounds so troll.
Sir, I've never heard of a WoW player overreacting to anything. I think you might be way off the mark there, all right? How dare you even suggest such a thing? No, I think that's a fair take. I can't imagine there ever really being a need for that in a lower end, but it's funny that actually ties into something we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes, but I don't want to jump ahead. Tettles, shifting over to you real quick, compared to a few years ago, 5, 10, whatever, do you feel you're more constrained by your class? And by your class, I do mean Druid, Moonkin specifically. Or do you think like external systems like encounter design, balance tuning, raid comps, and stuff like that, is that where the constraint comes in? Like, where does the real limitation come from today when you're playing?
I think the game is actually tuned better than it has been, at least in the past 5 to 10 years. I don't think that's necessarily a hot take. If you go look at like the delta between like top to bottom damage dealt in both Mythic Plus and Raid, I think it's pretty undeniable that the game is getting tuned better. But at the same time, as time goes on, the expectations have shifted drastically to where you're not allowed to play something that's a couple of percent worse. You have to play something either you're either in the meta comp or you're not, and there's not really a choice. So I don't actually think it's based around anything Blizzard specifically has done with encounter design or balancing, because I think they've actually improved the game in a couple of aspects like that. But I think that I would say basically since probably like 2020, around Shadowlands, maybe like really late BFA, people started caring a lot about like what was the meta? What does the meta really look like? And I think that puts a lot of constraints onto you as a player if you're trying to play at the absolute highest level. Obviously, if you're just like, doing weekly keys with the homies, it doesn't. But if you're trying to push the absolute highest level of content or achieve cutting edge, achieve rank 1 title keys, or honestly just like push yourself to be the best player you can be, a lot of times that does involve re-rolling because it gives you more opportunity than realistically it should. I would say that like, a really good player on a worse class, like if you're trying really hard and you put a bunch of effort in, you should be able to outperform somebody on a, maybe slightly better class. The problem is a lot of people are picking between two equally skilled people, and then of course they're going to take the person who's on something that's a little bit better. There's a reason that it's more meta. Like it's how it works.
You're playing Elemental right now, is that correct?
Yes, I am playing.
Is that what? Is that
I wasn't planning on it.
I think all three of us are right now, actually.
Yeah.
Dude, I was playing Ballasher at the beginning of the patch, and that shit was so unplayable. I was like permanently dead on Forge Weaver Ra's prog. Not doing damage. It eventually buffed Moon to the point where it was like, pretty playable in Raid, but it was fairly behind the mark. And then I just like randomly started gearing Nelly Shaman for fun because I knew I was going to get benched on Dimensius and Salvador, so I had nothing better to do. And so I was just like playing my Ellie Shaman. Then my raid leader was like, yo, do you want to play Ellie Shaman for prog? And next thing I'm just like on Ellie Shaman.
So what you're saying is Moonkin's dead, long live Ellie for Tettles, right?
Well, I remember we were sitting at Liquid, Tettles, and you were behind me. You're like, oh, I just got my 4 set I'm going to practice this rotation on the target dummy. And like you sit there for 12 seconds to cast 2 star surges at the end of your cooldown. I'm like, dude, that's it. That's your tier set. What's that?
It was goated. It was goated.
Xyronic, going into midnight, which again, it's just, I'm going to say this every week, so forgive me for anyone who's listening week after week, but God, it's right around the corner. But going into midnight, where does skill expression actually live right now for the average player? If you had to like rank rotational mastery, encounter knowledge, cooldown orchestration, that kind of stuff, like what truly separates the best players from the rest?
I think this is like a multi-tiered question because it depends on what level of gameplay you're at right now. If you're at the race to world, like the race to world first level, there's very minute things that are going to change between, you know, your fired ups and your other mages in the race to world first. But like generally speaking, like we were talking about earlier, I don't think skill expression really changed at all. I think the tiny little increases that you can get from doing a more perfect rotation, those are still going to be there in midnight. But in general, skill expression usually kind of happens outside of the damage rotation. Most players are actually pretty good at doing their damage rotation. You can get to like 95% efficiency with very little practice. It usually comes from the utility things, especially in things like Mythic Plus, right? Being able to get your CC out there, you know, on time, never miss an interrupt. Those are the things that really separate the best players from just your average players and pugs.
Yeah, I think that's
also just
really...
doing your damage rotation while dealing with like movement and other fight mechanics as well is like more important than actually like knowing what your rotation is. I feel like.
Yeah.
I think the depth, just the tag onto that as well. Like the depth of World of Warcraft specializations is absolutely insane. I think it's one of those things that's a lot of people talk about like, oh, this spec is super easy. Oh, this spec is 3 buttons, Beast Mastery Hunter, this, blah, blah, blah. Yet, I think that most players are never hitting sim DPS. They're not even particularly close to being able to hit optimal amounts of DPS done in any given scenario. And a lot of that comes down to how complicated each and every single specialization is, even if you just condensed it down to what is the simplest form of that. But I mean, there's a lot of talents and there's a lot of things that players avoid even looking at because it's too complicated to try to factor in whenever it's happening. Like if you were pooling resources for times where your trinket procced at the same time you had a different talent procced, and then you were spending those resources, then the game would be a lot more complicated, but players don't do that because it's too hard.
Yeah, real quick, please don't be afraid to interrupt me because all I'm doing is just I'm going to be like, yeah, good point or something like that. So if you have some, please don't be afraid to interrupt me by all means. I think all those are good points in all seriousness, and yeah, I love the fact that you guys have a lot to say in this topic. And Zorthas, swinging back to you at the top end, because you're raid leading honestly the best Oceanic guild out there. Does pruning actually make execution cleaner under pressure, like when you're pushing those fights at the upper end like that? Or is pruning just removing decision points that used to let great players distinguish themselves?
I mean, I really think it's neither. I think the decision points still exist. I mean, arguably, you can say that a pruned class, you can make more decisions than a non-pruned class. Because if you have like a lot of buttons and modifiers, you kind of have to press those buttons in the right order. But the more things they remove, potentially there's more freedom in the order you can press them. It's not necessarily always true, but it could be true. And I don't really think it's going to make much of an impact on execution. I mean, you still have to press buttons. You're not pressing buttons, and I don't really think like the brain like people will say things like brain dead, but I don't really think it kind of is going to be significantly different when you're actually like handling a mechanic. Like, I just don't think there's many classes out there that you're making like significant calculations every second that you couldn't just like stop making those and just lose a tiny bit of damage to deal with a mechanic.
I play BM Hunter. How dare you? I feel I take personal offense to that. I'm always calculating things, man. Am I kill commanding or am I Cobra shotting? That's really about it.
What if you get a Black Arrow proc?
I'm talking about midnight, sir. Right? We don't do that around here anymore. All right. No, joking aside, Zorthas, I want to tack on one more question real quick. Again, from a leadership standpoint, have you seen moments where having fewer tools has helped clearly has helped a raid in any given moment, or is there not really any difference from your standpoint?
The only difference is like there are like simpler classes to reroll to. If you need to have an emergency reroll, you can see that. I think once someone knows a class, it doesn't really matter how hard it is.
I think that's actually a really fair take. Yeah.
I think add-ons were the biggest change for me. Like I took a pretty extended break from raiding right after Aberrus. I was just like kind of over splits and doing multiple days a week of farm and stuff like that. And then I came back, and this was the first year that I started raiding progression. And the whole download a WeakAuras pack. Every 5 seconds, there's a TTS in your ear telling you what the next mechanic is and telling you what to do. That was just eye-opening. It almost made it to where I don't want to say you couldn't mess up, but it was an overabundance of information in a way that I had never experienced before whenever I had been raiding. And I think it makes it a lot more clearer from like a raider perspective, like what exactly is happening. And at the same time, I think your raid leader also has to say a lot less, because everybody also has this TTS lady in your ear being like, oh yeah, soak next. And you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to soak next.
Rule number 1 for me of all WeakAuras packs is the second you download it, go to the audio tab and just uncheck all.
No, dude, it's so broken. You should not do that. No.
I do not like audio cues.
I hate it. It overstimulates me, especially a bunch of these, like we used the Northern Sky Pack for raid this year, and it was very overstimulating in the sense that like it was chatty. But there's a reason that it's good, right? It's because it's chatty, and you can't ever like miss what's happening next.
I don't. What do you got? Real quick tangent. Xyronic, do you think losing WeakAuras is going to be good for the game or bad for the game? Good for the player, bad for the player, however you want to frame it.
We're not even losing that though, right?
Like, we're losing the actual add-on itself, I guess, unless someone else tries to like make it work for the expansion. I think there are people working on that. I don't think it matters. Like, people are going to download whatever new add-on works that does the things they want it to do, that replaces some of the functionality of WeakAuras. Yeah, we lose like the most powerful tool in the game, but like I think it opens up more opportunities for Blizzard to do like interesting mechanics in a raid that won't just have an add-on solve them for you. So I'm interested to see what they're going to be able to come up with on that front for like future raids.
Sure.
But like I don't think it's that big of a deal that we're losing WeakAuras.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be one of those situations to where, I mean, someone like me, I love WeakAuras. I love fiddling with my UI. I love messing with things. It's so much fun. It's one of the main things I love about WoW's entire toolkit, is just being able to tweak add-ons and to mess with add-ons. But kind of like what you said, if it's not there, we'll survive. Like the game will, the life goes on, kind of a thing. It may suck in one way or another, but it is what it is.
Well, the thing is, for the most part, it kind of is still there. I think most add-on functionalities are just gonna be in the game. You just have to get them from a different add-on.
Yeah, I mean, I saw something from Reload the other day too, like where Northern Sky raid tools, it looks awfully similar to some of the functionality that WeakAuras had previously. And then there's also like, I've seen a bunch of timeline reminder WeakAuras stuff, which is, those are the things that I didn't like about raiding this tier, was like the timeline reminder stuff on top of the TTS in my ear. And so the fact that that's staying, it's a little bit disheartening. But I think that the conversation surrounding what's been going on with add-ons has been blown out of proportion a little bit, let's say.
Yeah. I know a lot of people keep saying that add-ons are dead, which is obviously not true. I think that, the nature will find a balance once again at some point in time as the expansion goes on, as people realize what is and isn't permitted and what is or isn't still around. Then we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. But Tettles, when Blizzard talks about class identity, it often shows up as a damage profile. Who's doing the most DPS? What's meta? That kind of stuff. But from your perspective, should identity be defined more by responsibility and risk in a raid? And are there specs right now that get this right, or in some cases very wrong?
Can you reword the question a little bit? I'm trying to.
So oftentimes people look at a class and they're like, this class is good because it does a ton of damage, or this class is bad because damage is horrible. But
yeah,
should the identity of a class be more than just damage? And by nature, of course, it is. Like, how important is that being able to take on responsibility in a raid, being able to take on tasks in a raid, versus just being known for being a pump master, just being able to slam keys or whatever the case may be?
I mean, obviously, I think you need both. I think that like you can't just have somebody who is an NPC in your guild who does 100% damage but is dead on CD. There's not really an option for that. So there's kind of two things, right? There's the player control element of it where it's like that guy sucks, but he does a lot of damage, or that guy is mechanically very gifted, and it was a raid leader, I guess. And then I think Scripe was a good example of this. I remember, God, in like BFA, Scripe was very heavily criticized. I will say, probably unnecessarily so, about his damage performance, and that he was raid leading the entire time. Obviously, if you're shot calling in a Mythic Plus group, or if you're raid leading a raid, there is going to be some inherent damage loss just that. And I think that you would rather have more people who are vocal and or communicative than you have somebody who is just completely muted and just doing the most damage. But the truth of the matter is that you probably need both. You need people who are just doing a lot of damage, but at the same time, if you have too many people who are trying to communicate at the same time, you're going to run into a lot of issues. And then there's the class design perspective, where you have some classes who don't really help the group all too often. I think maybe like a Havoc Demon Hunter is probably the best example of that. Like, what the hell are they going to do? Like, they're not helping. They'll drop darkness, whatever they're called. But they could play without raid frames turned on. I think that's always kind of. I even saw like a clip from Dorky this where he was literally just raiding without raid frames on his DK. And raid frames, like there was a WeakAura that would show up, like if somebody ever died and he had the potential to battle rest them, then his raid frames would pop up. But he didn't play without raid frames because DK doesn't do. But like I think that it's like from a class perspective. Then you have something like Augevoker, which I guess would be almost the antithesis, where you have to be paying attention to every single thing that's going on with all of your other teammates.
Not a good night.
Well, yeah, I don't know, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be true, but maybe we'll see. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting conversation. I think that the reality of the matter is like they're all building blocks on top of one another. I think that the things that make you a good player it's just like a culmination of all of the cumulative, like what is your awareness? It's kind of where that is baked in. It's like what is your awareness for the entirety of the situation?
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Tettles hates Havoc Demon Hunter players. Go ahead and get it printed on a shirt. All right?
That's true.
Xyronic, do you think that modern classes, do they reward players with that dig into like edge case interactions and niche optimizations, or has Blizzard intentionally like flattened out those things to make everything just bare bones and basic and run of the mill and whatnot? And if they have, from your perspective, do you think that was necessary for the health of the game, or do we want these classes that can just do crazy things that no one else can do?
Well, I don't think with like the proc-based system that a lot of specs rely on right now that there's ever going to be a situation where you're not going to have edge case interactions, right? That's where the extra few percent comes from, right? When I was talking earlier about how pretty much every player can get to within 95% efficiency of playing a class, the extra few percent comes from these edge case interactions. Like if you're playing Diabolist Warlock, right, and you don't properly play around your demonic arts, you can lose a lot of damage over the course of a 6-minute encounter just not playing around those perfectly. As an LA Shaman, knowing which buttons you should be pressing during Ascendance. If you're pressing Frost Shocks, you're messing up. You should only be pressing the Ice Furies. That's a big damage loss during your Ascendance, which is an insanely strong cooldown. These tiny little things that most people wouldn't know about if they just read a guide in 2 minutes and start playing it, those are the things that reward like the top end of the player base right now.
You guys who play Elemental, i.e. all of you, like what is it about Ellie right now that people are gravitating toward? Is it just the fact that it cranks, or is there something else there?
Yes.
Yeah, it just does big damn. Like, what are we talking about?
It's being like the highest simming spec. It's just tuned very highly right now, and it has a strong cooldown window. Pretty works out pretty well.
Well,
in current raid, you're
for
always
those
in
of you
cooldowns in M+.
For those of you playing Elemental, enjoy it for the next 9 days until the pre-patch, because after that point, who knows, man? Who knows what's happening with pre-patch in terms of balance and whatnot? Everything's changing, so have fun, guys. Have fun. We're going to jump over to topic number 2 now with a raid design philosophy. And Zorthas, from your perspective, which I guess that's the only thing you can answer from, considering, it's you. How does Midnight compare to the last few expansions in terms of what it's actually asking from players during progression. You know, comparing it Shadowlands to DF to the War Within to Midnight. Does anything feel meaningfully different in terms of what Blizzard expects people to do when it comes to learning, adapting, stabilizing, etc.?
Well, and probably the most different thing about Raid is I would assume that assignments are now done with your brain instead of reading like text assigning you where to go with like a debuff or something. That's probably like I don't know if there's going to be some sneaky add-on to like circumvent that at all, but that's probably going to be the biggest difference. For the most part, the raid testing actually felt very similar. It didn't feel like I was playing like a different game or anything. It kind of felt like the similar design to the previous raids. They aren't making it like super easy or anything like some people had theorized.
In testing, go ahead.
You talk.
I was just going to ask, in testing, you guys have probably each tested multiple bosses, but do things feel slower to you, or are things kind of still unfolding just as quickly, or whatever you want to define it as they do in the War Within, in terms of boss engagement and mechanics and whatnot?
I don't think the raid feels slower. I think it's it kind of just feels like similar speed, similar cadence.
So
I think the there isn't anything in the raid that I would say is like really no way to humanly solve it though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of where I was heading with it. Is now that we don't have things, well, I guess maybe we do, but now that we don't have quite the same amount of stuff screaming in our ear, telling us what to do or how to calculate things and whatnot, and we're all kind of relying more on our brains. Do you feel like they're accounting for that change? Is what you're saying?
And I think they're pretty much like accounting for the change now, minus like Fractalist. This whole raid is pretty much done without WeakAuras.
For me, a good answer as to what their solution is going to be to this like lesser add-on situation is what they do with Fractalist and pre-patch. Like, do we actually know? Has it been on PTR yet? Do we know what their plan is to fix that encounter? Because right now that's 100% solved. There's only the data mine. What's the data mine?
I think they were changing something. The tank buster crystal.
It's like the debuffs have a longer duration or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Less damage from the mythic wars. The mythic wars do less damage, so you can break in a more random order.
Yeah. It's interesting because I mean what Zorthas said is true. Like we didn't necessarily need WeakAuras, but then it's like it's optimal, right? It's always optimal to have more information, and I think that that's kind of where us as players, we kind of stepped in. We wanted more information, and so just like a culmination of things over time. Well, add-ons, and I think that this is what Blizzard's initial intention was with at least the semi-disarmament of add-ons, was like, all right, you guys have too much information to the point where it makes the game actually less fun, not more fun. It's kind of it's an interesting philosophy from what they said, but I do think that like they stated that this is going to help them design encounters differently and more cohesively, not have to work around like weird add-ons completely breaking their fights. I don't really see there being much of a difference in terms of their like actual design of encounters, though. Kind of funny.
I
think your mic's cutting out a little bit, by the way, Tettles.
Oh, I can fix that. My bad.
Tettles, while you tweak with that, I want to get your opinion on this. Like, where do you see? We talked about this a little bit with like movement and stuff like that, but where do players still get to express their skill in modern raids? And like, what separates those great players in ways that most people don't think about, they don't see, they don't even realize what's going on? And I'm asking you specifically. I mean, I could ask Xyronic too, because you're literally casting world first race, the MDI, stuff like that, to where you have to be hyper aware as the guy saying so-and-so is doing X, Y, and Z, that people just don't even compute because they don't operate at, on that level.
I mean, I think it's just like, I think it's very surface level. It's like mitigating deaths. If you're able to actually mitigate your deaths, even less so than your peers, that's how you actually are able to break forth and see progression happen. I think that raid is very research heavy for everybody that's not in a Race World First guild. I mean, I don't like everybody's a video guild in 2026 now. Everybody's able to watch videos and watch progression of other guilds. And I think that like being able to learn from other people's mistakes and trying to figure out where you're supposed to be positioned, why you're supposed to be positioned there, how did you get there in the first place, and then doing your damage and your healing rotation on top of that is all very valuable. I think that like setting up like pre-planning all of your defensives, that's like a really easy way of just like making sure that you don't have something messed up. So like just completely copy pasting somebody else's defenses, that's a great way. And I think it's one of those things that like the thing that really separates some players is like movement and just making sure that you don't die, because those are the things that really stagnate progression. Is like if you have this person and they got a ton of deaths and you have like a healer on Rashok and they're dead on CD, it doesn't matter if they're a good healer or not. If they're dead on CD, you're not killing that boss. Like there's nothing that you can do to solve that. And I think everybody had a healer who was permanently dead on Rashok. That was like a common experience, I think, for everybody's guild.
Yeah, I can see it's like the most important things showing out to the boss and just doing everything right on the first pull, not like having to learn things as you go. Yeah. And then also just consistency, like doing the same thing every pull and rarely making mistakes. I think those are probably the two like most important things.
How do you guys think if someone wants to get into raiding in Midnight, like, hey man, this looks awesome, there's a prune, it's a great time to jump in the raiding, which I think it is in all seriousness. How should people approach that? Like, how should people approach the question of, well, how do I stop dying? Like, how do I not stand and stuff? How do I not get hit by this and clipped by that and so on and so forth if they don't have years of practice doing it? Is it just, well, get in there and try? Like, just get in there and start practicing?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, like Tettles said, every guild, including the top end guilds, are video guilds nowadays. There's so much prep put in on the top end that by the time they get to the actual encounter on Mythic, except for the last boss, of course, since we don't know anything about that, generally speaking, other than data mining, they pretty much know exactly what they're going to do when they get to the boss. That's why the first like 5 bosses in the raids typically die within the first day or two, because they know exactly what they're going to do when they're going to press their cooldowns. And this comes from months of preparation where they're having meetings every other week where they're talking about bosses, where they go over mechanics before raid testing for a couple of hours, then raid test for a few hours, and then the analysts afterwards will talk for a couple hours about what they want to do. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. So for you to just like watch a video or two on how an encounter works, or maybe watch a VOD of somebody who's killed the boss on your class, learn when to press those buttons, learn when to press your cooldowns, learn how everything lines up perfectly. If you do that, your performance on a boss will be way higher.
I think players severely overvalue things like getting 0.1% damage from gearing and severely undervalue preparation in terms of like trying to come in with just a little bit more information as to what's happening on the encounter and whatnot. But I do think like in terms of like how do you improve as a player, there is going to have to be some element of practicing, right? Where you go in, you have results and they are what they are, but then how do you improve those results for the next time that you make it there? Why was your rotation bad? And there's a couple of, I think there's a couple of like pretty easy ways of solving that. First off, it's figuring out why you're making mistakes, figuring out what those mistakes are. You can also record your kind of POV. And I think that watching yourself back and trying to understand like what you're doing wrong is always an easy way of assessing the situation and trying to improve, because I think it's a lot easier to like understand what the mistakes you made were whenever you're not actually like having to do your rotation and like focus on your movement and stuff like that. And I think that like getting a POV whenever you're able to like step out of that encounter is valuable. So I think that recording your POV is always super valuable. But I think that like Zorthas and Xyronic mentioned, and I just want to pair at that, I think that preparation is a huge deal, and players do not want to do it. Like it doesn't matter, like it doesn't matter what you say, players will not go through the time it takes to actually look at a boss encounter or look at a dungeon mechanically and figure out what's going on. Instead, they're going to just, oh yeah, the reason that I'm not doing good damage is because I don't have this trinket that's 0.2% DPS increase.
All right, listen, don't hurt my feelings, all right? Come on, man. Xyronic at the top end, we're talking about all this stuff about, eliminating mistakes and whatnot. Like, is raid difficulty today about eliminating mistakes, or is it about finding creative solutions to these problems? And which one do you think Blizzard specifically is prioritizing right now?
This kind of ties in a little bit with what Tettles was talking about earlier, right? Where at the top end specifically, what you're asking, all of those players, and I mean, this goes down to even like the top 20 guilds, not necessarily just like the 3 Race to World first guilds that we watch the broadcasts of every tier. Most of the players in these top guilds, if you just let them sit in front of a target dummy, they could do like 99% of their class's damage most of the time, barring RNG. But in a raid encounter, it's about doing that consistently. And like Tettle said, just not dying. So you can keep seeing further into the fight, seeing how things line up to kill the boss. In general, like that's most of the skill cap of like the high end. But there's also like like finding solutions to problems that happen in the raid. I think one of the most like the coolest examples of this, and this has been talked about forever, was go back to Castle Nathria and see that clip of Fired Up saving the raid on Artificer's IMOX, right? Players that have the wherewithal to do that in the middle of the raid and save a pull, that's some of the coolest shit you can do in WoW. And having individual players in your team that can make those plays, that really sets apart like just some of the top end raiders from the very best players.
Zorthas, do you think that Blizzard is better right now at making fights difficult or at making them satisfying to progress on? And where, if so, do those two goals come into conflict?
I mean, they've made a lot of fights difficult. There are fights that are satisfying to progress on, but there are also a lot of fights that are probably overly difficult now. And they definitely do like tuning for race welfare. I mean, we know like about like Araz, Styx, and Brutus that are like the biggest
Jesus,
biggest issues in this expansion with raid. Those are like very difficult fights, and they were like at the wrong point, right? I think I think they really that they know how to make a fight difficult, but they don't know when to make a fight difficult. Is the current issue we have this expansion. I think like the tuning of the difficult fights is like pretty spot on, but it's like, should these fights really be so hard?
I think their gauge for like how hard a fight will be is very off. I feel like it's so infrequent that we have like a 20 or 30 pull boss, or like even like a 40 or 50 pull boss nowadays. It's like either it's 5 pulls or less, or it's 150 pulls. It's just like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and we're fighting pre-nerf Forge Weaver Raz, and Zorthas' guild is slamming down hundreds and hundreds of pulls. They should have gone and done mythic splits instead of actually pulling the boss. Like it's like I feel like there's like a gradient to difficulty, and for some reason lately it's been very all or nothing. Maybe we as players have just evolved so much, and we're so much better than Blizzard is, that we, maybe 20 pull bosses can't exist anymore or something. But like I feel like it's been all or nothing, and it's been kind of crazy from like a player perspective.
Do you think that, I don't even know how to word this question properly, so I'm just going to say whatever comes to my mind. Like, should players on some level be involved with raid design? And to specify more what I mean by that is would it benefit the player base as a whole for Blizzard to be like, hey, these guys are really good at raiding, let's get their opinion on something? Or do you think that would just make things horrible and difficult and punishing and whatnot?
Dude, I mean, there's a reason that I don't work in Irvine, California and make World of Warcraft. Like, what are we talking about? Like, no, that's not my job. I don't want that to be my job. I'm just a content creator, right? Like, and I think from a raider perspective, your feedback is valuable, but not in the sense that like your feedback should be the only thing that matters, right? At the end of the day, they are the people, like people who work at Blizzard, the people who are designing the game. And there are I swear it's worse than sports. There are so many armchair developers for World of Warcraft. It is the most unreal thing ever. No, I don't think our opinion matters more than theirs. Like ultimately, they have to be good at their job, and they are good at their job for most aspects. It's just like it kind of is this tuning thing. That's been a little bit wonky in raid as of late, and especially with those bosses that Zorthas cited.
Yeah, dude, if they took the overall opinion of everyone that was like an armchair analyst for raids, we would have terrible raids. But I mean, in the past, they've done things like this, right? They've like target recruited specific people from high end raiding members in the community to be on the QA team before. They've had raiders from Premonition back in the day, more recently Midwinter, although recently was like 6 or 7 years ago now. Didn't mean to do the meme, by the way. Sorry about that. And they worked on the QA team for raid for a while, and it was some of the best raid years that we've had. So I think it can work, but it has to be like optimized small teams. It can't just be like the public general opinion. Maybe if
Yeah.
they took like a few examples from like the very high end guilds, and if they needed feedback on something, sure. But like, yeah, no public opinions. Those are always bad.
Yeah, after the dungeon pool poll, I don't think they should have the
Dude.
community design a boss.
Oh, that's what someone in Twitch chat just said. I was gonna bring that up. Oh God, man.
I mean, is there a lack of information? I feel like there is a lot of feedback that is given towards Blizzard. I don't think that Blizzard ever actually lacks information in terms of feedback. It really kind of comes down to what the actions that they take are when designing things.
If anything, they probably get too much feedback, right? And it's hard to filter the good feedback from just the random feedback.
Dude, unironically, I wish we could actually get away from actually needing a beta or a PTR. If we could actually remove betas and PTRs, I think that would make the game better. I don't think that they could do that personally. Like I think that they rely too much on them for QA testing. But I do think it would make for a more interesting game if things were not able to be tested beforehand and Blizzard was not able to get feedback on it.
Yeah. You're saying it would be, like you said, more interesting, but of course, without assuming thousands of people testing it, there would be bugs and issues and problems. That's what you're communicating, right?
Does there have to be? I mean, it's kind of the interesting question. I don't think there has to be. There just would be, because that's, I think that we would kind of all understand the situation here, but there doesn't really have to be a bunch of bugs and whatever else.
Touche, sir. Tettles, do you think that Blizzard communicates encounter intent clearly enough through mechanics right now going into Midnight, or does difficulty often come from ambiguity and hidden rules and whatnot? And when that happens, because it does happen, does it add depth or frustration, or is that just part of the fun and figuring out the puzzle?
Lately, I feel like it's okay. So telegraphing is kind of like a two-fronted, discussion point. There's telegraphing in the sense that like people talk about how telegraphing has gotten better because there's swirlies on the ground that you can see more clearly defined, and telegraphing is pretty good in that way. Telegraphing is still pretty bad on some mechanics where it's like at a baseline of the game, you don't always know what you're supposed to be doing. The game doesn't really do a good job of teaching you, and I don't think that's actually. I think that's pretty true with most mechanics. It's like the game doesn't really do a great job of explaining exactly what mechanic is going to happen. Specifically with Raid, I feel like they've gone very heavy into mechanic spam whenever they don't really know what to do to make a boss encounter hard. Tindral Sage Swift was a great example of that. They just literally spammed mechanics at you 100 miles an hour. I think Soul Hunters from this season was also a good example of that, where it's just like the only mechanic was all the mechanics that were present on Heroic except 10 times faster. And you're like, oh, well, hold on. It's like, and I think that from a player perspective, it does make it really difficult to learn, because I don't think Blizzard does a good job of teaching players what exactly is happening. And that's kind of where the add-ons come in to supplement that, right? I think there's it's kind of like a cohesive dance where the add-ons exist to help the players, and then Blizzard designed the encounters with the add-ons in mind, where the add-ons are going to help the players.
I feel like in the history of like the top end, the Race to World first scene, there's only ever been one encounter that I can think of where the players solved it in a different way from the intended design of the developer. And that was Fate's Cry Brokolo. Remember that boss in Sanctum of Domination? Where Limit's solution was to just have everyone stand on their runes in the intermission and just run in the same direction. And you could get to your spot before the intermission ended and you solved the mechanic. The intended design was for you to jump over the lines. And no one tried it, and no one even bothered doing it because the world first kill just showed this cheese strat. But no one ended up doing it the intended way of the developer. In general, I think like most of their design is pretty clear with how it's intended to be solved. And I feel like that's just gotten better over time, like Tettles was talking about, with the way that they've designed the new graphics.
It is I feel like it is intentional, but I do think that's what makes World of Warcraft kind of hard, no?
In what way? What do you mean by that?
I think I think another boss where players did things different. Brood Twister or Brood Keeper Diona. There was like a debuff where you got an increased damage stacking damage increase while you're on the boss.
Yeah.
So I think like the intention of that boss was you're meant to like swap groups. Like, one group was meant to be on the boss, one group was meant to be on the ads. But it ended up being like 5 people were on the boss the whole time, just hitting a single target dummy and pressing an immune to get rid of that debuff.
Tettles, I don't remember exactly what was brought. What did you mean by what you said a moment ago? If you recall what that was.
How do I even describe it? I think that while things are very clear from an encounter design perspective as to like what Blizzard wants you to do, figuring out how to do that as the player is obviously a big challenge. And in a way that I think the game has actually become mechanically a bit harder over time from like what's required from you as like an individual. A lot of it normally ends up being macro decisions, like strategy based stuff. But I think lately it's actually been like, oh, how you're moving your character around, like where you're positioning. How do you deal with all these mechanics happening towards you at the exact same time? And I think that that's actually become more difficult as time has gone on. Even though Blizzard's clear about like what's happening, it's kind of the interesting question of like, how do you still design a difficult encounter?
What's your feral druid's name?
Doug.
Oh, I have a very soft spot in my heart for Doug because that's my son's stuffed animal's name. So good old Doug. Well, thank you for your answer. I do appreciate you taking the time to answer that. Xyronic, I want to jump to you real quick. What do you think Blizzard currently believes makes a great raid encounter, and do you agree with that definition?
That's an interesting question. I think it's a lot easier to notice when an encounter is bad rather than when it's great. Because generally speaking, like most good encounters are like, okay, the mechanics felt good to resolve, and the DPS check was tough but doable if everyone stays alive or if you have a death or two. I think it's easier to answer the question of what are bad raid encounters, and like anything that involves like loss of character control are really bad. Like I'm thinking Queen Ashara. You had to line of sight 2 times every 7 seconds to get rid of the debuff. That was terrible. Never do that again. Fights where your character gets stunned or rooted and you have to move out of mechanics, those aren't particularly fun. I think the most recent example of that was like Farak, where one of the mechanics, you could just get RNG picked for a root, and that wasn't particularly exciting to play around. Dimensius as well, when you get knocked into the air. Yeah, that's not particularly exciting in phase 1. Those are the things that make an encounter not fun to play. But in general, like hard DPS checks, where when you defeat the encounter, it's because everyone played out of their mind, did the mechanics perfectly. Those are really fun. And like some of the best encounters are like the ones in the middle of the raid where they're hard single target checks. Like I think one of my favorite of all time is Gorm back in Trial of Valor. That was just a ridiculous DPS check. That also had a thing that made you lose your character control, which is really annoying with the ice mechanic that froze you. If your Shadow Priest got targeted with that, you just couldn't kill the boss. But it was a great DPS check encounter, and it wasn't particularly hard mechanically. Yeah. But when you pulled it off properly, it felt great to play.
I think it's a little bit more simple too. Like I think it really just kind of comes down to, did I have fun whenever I was progressing that boss? And it's, there's a lot of elements like Zyro hit on that go into, did I have fun? But I do think it's a very simple question. It's like, was this encounter satisfying to progress? Like, did I have a good time whenever I was dealing with all the mechanics? And whenever I killed the boss, how did it feel?
Yeah, I think both of you actually make a really good point, especially when it comes to the fun factor of things. And I guess it's just tough to kind of hit that nail on the head, because I guess different roles and different experience levels and whatnot. I think this ties back into what you were saying a minute ago, Tettles. Like I'm glad I'm not the guy that decides what is or isn't a raid encounter. I'm not qualified for it clearly, so don't listen to me. Zorthas, I want to ask your opinion on this one. When Blizzard misses on raid design, which is kind of what we were talking about a moment ago, do you think it's usually because they aimed too high, or is it because they played it too safe? In which failure, if you even do respect it at all, do you respect more?
I mean, it's both. Galliovix was too safe. That's like a clear example of them being too safe. They were trying to do something new, and then they just didn't put any mechanics in because they thought it being hidden was enough of a mechanic. And the tuning, a lot of the time, the tuning they aim too high. I don't know if they aim too high on the mechanics though. Most of the time, I feel like the misses on raid design are mostly like tuning, or like a mechanic not having enough time to deal with. I think those are the two biggest misses.
Can you, real
At the
quick,
moment.
for those? No, I just want to make sure that people understand what your example means. When it comes to Gallywix, he was the last boss in Liberation of Undermine, second tier of the War Within. Explain why or how that went wrong.
Well, Galax is like the easiest end boss ever. They had like a hidden dungeon journal where Galax Mythic was a different boss from Galax Heroic. Phase 1 was fine. You go into phase 2, the boss has no mechanical overlaps. He does like one thing every like 15 seconds. It's just like you dodge a frontal or you like dodge a swirler, you move out. It was like kind of hitting a target dummy for that entire phase. So there was like really nothing going on, and it's definitely it was like easier than all the previous bosses in that raid. Easier than any other end boss. It was just kind of like a bit of a letdown for an end boss, and it was like clear they like played that boss too safe. They just thought like the whole like mythic being different from heroic was going to be enough of a barrier, but I think mythic and heroic are like so far removed now that that's not so much of a thing.
Yeah, I think with that boss in particular, they thought that having these bombs on individual raiders that would just instantly wipe you if they died would be enough to make the encounter too hard. But they didn't foresee the raids, like the raid teams saying, okay, fine, we'll put 4 fire mages on them that have cauterize, and we'll put the 5th one on a tank that will never die. So that's just not really a mechanic we have to deal with. In the end, it was just a pretty disappointing final boss, like Zorthas is saying. It's like the first sub 100 pull in boss since Xavius, I think. So like 8 years ago.
Was Sark? What was Sark? Like 115 or
Sark
something?
was like 130,
over
I want to
100.
say.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, this is also the same company that brings you bangers such as Brood Twister Ovanax, right? Like it's one of those things that sometimes they just like miss the mark, and as a player, it feels kind of crazy how much they'll miss the mark by. But then obviously, I think it's from like a designer perspective, it's probably just like, oh, they if they gave Brood Twister Overnax 4 more seconds on breaking those eggs, maybe that's a very different encounter in terms of how it feels to play. But whenever you were playing it, you were like, oh, this is an impossible challenge for me.
Tettles, if you could remove one recurring design trend from modern raids entirely, never see it again, throw it out the window, what would it be and why? And B, is there a raid design or something in Midnight that you've tested so far that just has you just deflated and not looking forward to having to deal with it?
God, a recurring. Do either of you guys have a recurring design trend that you guys hate? I feel like I don't have one. I'm like, oh,
I mean,
yeah,
I think we talked about this. I think we talked about it before the stopping DPS. Was that before we started the show? Is that right? Hold DPS, everyone.
Okay, yeah, that one's terrible.
That one's bad. Line of sight's bad.
I don't think that one shows up that often. No.
Yeah, I think they got better at the stopping DPS thing.
Yeah. That one.
What I think is a bad recurring thing is the 8 boss raids. Like every raid has been 8 bosses. Next raid is 9 bosses. Like this whole expansion, we had 8 boss raids. In the past, like the last raid of the expansion would have a lot more bosses. Like now they're just doing 8 boss raid, 9 boss raids. I feel like the difficulty curve is like worse as a result. Like the amount of easy bosses is worse. The amount of hard bosses kind of stays the same in 8 boss raid. So it's kind of bad for like general players as well, I feel like.
Do you feel like they're designing it that way because there is less downtime between tiers and expansions as of late?
It seems like it's they've been very formulaic with what's going on, but it feels like they're trying to pump out content a lot faster. And I don't know this to be certain. Speculatively, it seems like it's a byproduct of that. But I mean, that is purely speculative based off people who don't work at Blizzard.
Yeah.
I think something else that it's not raid design based, but like I guess the loot is kind of part of the raid design. I don't like when they lock the best pieces of gear behind the end bosses. I like when they're earlier on in the raid. Like Nerebar Palace was great for that. You had 2 super rare items from the first 4 bosses, really easy to gear alts, but then they didn't do it for the rest of the expansion. It'd be nice if there were more like extremely good items on the first few bosses so people could farm them more easily.
I will say I think that it's less about an encounter design thing. I think that your question was more like, oh, what encounter trope do you think that you hate the most? To me, it's more just like I think that the scariest part is how formulaic things have gotten lately, where everything feels like it's very cookie cutter in terms of design. And I think that is a scary proposition for World of Warcraft. Is if things aren't, evolving enough, then you can get into a space where it's like, oh, I feel like I've already played this before. Why do I need to play this again? And if every season feels the same, that's where that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's like
actually...
when they kept spamming that blaze mechanic, right?
Yeah,
that blaze mechanic's not bad. Like it is fine, but if it's overused,
it's like a good mechanic, but it did feel like it was. You got to the part where they added the blaze mechanic. It's like, yeah, it's a blaze.
Yeah. It's based. I would call it based off the Fyrakk blaze, right? Like it's kind of a funny one.
Tettles, the kind of I definitely understand what you mean by what you're saying, because for me, and again, this is just my experience, of course, but I stopped raiding after killing Mythic Denathrius and Castle Nathria, and I stepped away. And I feel like, while it's not objectively true, but for the most part, I feel like I haven't missed that much. I'm getting back into Mythic raiding with Midnight. And of course, I've missed some really good encounters and some fun raids and stuff like that. But I feel like I haven't really missed enough to where I'm going to come into Midnight and not know what the heck's going on. It just feels samey. Not necessarily in a bad way, but, like you said, formulaic. This is a raid. This is a boss. This is a mechanic. Been there, done that kind of a thing. I don't know if you guys have any perspective on that.
Dragonflight did a lot, and then War Within built off the back of what Dragonflight did.
I mean, do you think? Fair to say.
Yeah, and that's. I guess it's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's just like more the same. Is that it going to entice and excite players? I don't know. But then again, here I am coming back. So it's like, what does that really say? Like, here we are, still playing, still raiding, still, engaged with the game. So I don't know. Don't listen to me.
Well, it's kind of been like that for a long time too, right? Where they've been kind of recycling the same mechanics in different formats for the past 20 years, and people still come back to keep playing them. There are very rarely like new bosses that'll have a new concept or a new mechanic on them that you have to come up with some new idea to deal with. And when they do, it's awesome. But something that I would like to see is like them to take ideas from other games. Like Final Fantasy XIV has some awesome things that they do in that game. And I think one of the worst problems in WoW right now is there are too many mechanics where if you fail a mechanic, you die or the entire raid dies. Like, why does it have to be just instant death? Why can't it just be like, ooh, you do 20% less damage for the next minute? You're still alive. You can still see further into the encounter, but you're not going to kill at this pull.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I mean, I can't say why they don't do that, of course. Maybe it's just to prolong engagement or something. Who knows? I think that's a good point. Like, why is it just pass or fail? I think someone said that. Yeah, Moriarty in chat said that a few minutes ago. Get rid of pass fail mechanics that wipe the raid. I think a lot of people would agree with that for sure.
I think pass fail mechanics are good.
Well, here we go, people. We've already got someone disagreeing with what chat said. Go ahead, Tettles. Keep going.
They're just not good at the frequency that they're currently used. They're not that good. Like I think that they have a time and a place, but if the time and the place is every single encounter, then you're like, this is too much. This feels a bit aggressive in terms of like how frequently you see it. And I think that's been the problem with pass fails. Is like, if you get them on every single boss, yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel that good.
If nothing was pass fail, it would also be kind of boring. Kind of just nothing would be consequential. If like nothing actually like killed you and everything just gave you some debuff, like at some point when the damage checks are like less relevant, everything's just like kind of whatever. They need to like strike a balance in these things.
I think it comes down to like what is the mechanic. I think that Fyrakk and Tendril Sage Swift ran into huge problems where it's like trying to blow up a seed within 3 seconds and having to carry that that bomb on Fyrakk, those are like huge pass fail points, and I think that those run into problems where they don't feel as satisfying. Where and same with like Brute Twister Overnax, where then some other pass fail mechanics. What are examples of like really good ones? Needing to kill your pillar on time on Forge Weaver or Raz, like that's fine as a pass fail. Like I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like I don't think it's like the greatest like example, but that is like fundamentally pass fail. Either you kill the pillar on time or you don't.
I think the worst example of it was for sure Halandris, right? The entire encounter at any point, your entire raid just blows up, and you're like, all right, well, which of the 6 bombs was it this time?
It depends on what the mechanic is, for sure. I think that's a really good point.
Xyronic, before we jump into the final topic of the show, what do you think is the clearest sign, especially early on in progression, that a raid was designed by people who truly understand high-end raiding, or just raiding at a baseline, versus, well, let's give it to the new guy kind of a thing?
I mean, I think the easiest answer there is just how well the DPS check is designed for the gear that people have. But in the past few years, that's been something that they will actually update as the raiders step into the raid. Like I remember in Nyalotha, this is 6 years ago now, we killed the first couple of bosses in the raid, and then it opens up and you can go to one of 3 different wings, right? You could target all of the bosses in the raid, see what HP they had. And then after we pulled the boss, and when the boss respawned, it had like 12% more HP. It's like, oh, they're actively tuning the raid around what DPS we did on the first 3 bosses. So I guess that's not necessarily like the most perfect example anymore. But going back to like some of the previous questions, like designing encounters where it feels satisfying to solve the mechanics, that's really important to me. Not losing player control. And I mean just the fight feeling fair to progress on. If I have fun on the encounter, that shows that they respect high-end rating, and like that they really want to make good encounters for people that have good problems to solve.
Are there any?
I think.
Go ahead.
I think the fight timers are probably a good example of this. I think there are definitely some fights that are like you can tell they thought about what cooldowns people had and when people would do things. Like Dementius is definitely like that.
And again, like it goes the other way as well, right? There's times where you look at an encounter and you're like, they hate high-end raiders. Like a really good example of that was Stone Guardians back in Castle Nathria when you last raided, right? That encounter.
I like that encounter.
You liked that encounter?
You like that encounter?
What is wrong with you?
I was raiding with Essence, awesome guild. They don't raid anymore. We were like US 15th or something like that. So I wasn't like bleeding edge, but I was still fairly high up there. I don't know, man. I heard all this talk, all this smack about Stone Legion generals being horrible. Dude, I went in there as an MM hunter. I had the time of my life. I loved it. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know, man.
I think the variance on that fight was absolute BS. Where you had to kill the Stoneborn ads within a certain time frame. I think that was complete nonsense.
Not even that, but like Zorthas was saying with the timers, right? Like you had your timers for that fight. The boss didn't care. It would just cast random things in different ways every single pull, and you just kind of had to hope that you'd get the right sequence so that you could go into the intermission and not just be dead to whatever mechanic you just got.
One of my viewers, Moose, makes a good point. It was fun for me because MM did turbo damage in that fight, and it really did, man. That was just, oh god, I did have fun in that fight. Sorry guys, I'm a noob. Apologies. As long as I can pew pew, I'm happy. So what can I say? I didn't mean to talk over. If you had anything else you wanted to add to that, I apologize. If not, we'll move on to the last big topic here. We have some good questions coming up in chat. So we've been recording for about an hour 10 now, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to answer these questions. So I might cut a couple of questions from this topic, so bear with me here. But Zorthas, we're going to be talking about optimization versus fun, and I want to know, how much responsibility do you think top players actually have for this environment that they're influencing? You know, your top end players who are out there showing how it's done. At what point does sharing knowledge turn into shaping how everyone else feels forced to play? Because it's the meta, it's what's expected, it's what Liquid did, it's what Honestly did, and so on and so forth.
I think I think rating is very influenced. World First does something, everyone actually just copies it entirely, and there's like a breaking point. Like down the line, though, the bosses have gotten nerfed and people do different strats. Like I think there's like different ways people play some mechanics on Dementius now that it's been nerfed, like the lines on the Artosian platform. I've seen. I watched Race to World last streams, and they all kind of do something different on those lines. But I think for rating, definitely, it's like everything just like comes down from the top. Everyone runs similar comps. There's like a definite meta comp that goes from World First down to like World 100, 200, 300, something like that. And then in M Plus as well, there's like obviously the meta comp, all the meta pools, and I feel like people just like play as well according to those kinds of things.
Do you think that's good for the game, or do you think that's just kind of it is what it is? There's no way to get around it.
I don't really like following what other people do in games for the most part. In most other games, I'll just try to do my own thing. But there's a point. It's like a social game. You can't just do your own thing in WoW. You have to do what's correct.
Blizzard also stated that I think content creator Ian was talking about this in an interview where he was talking about the influence on content creators on the greater public as to, you know, there is a right and a wrong way of playing the game now, at least according to people who are playing the game. And I think that it's kind of an interesting discussion point, because then Blizzard has to factor that in whenever they're actually designing the game, as to like how are people actually going to play? Like, well, how are you supposed to address that as like the creator of the game?
I mean, that kind of ties into my next question in a way, Tettles. Like, how like, are there forms of optimization that feel healthy and engaging versus ones that are like corrosive to enjoyment? And if so, like, what separates the two there?
It's hard to really explain like what separates the two. Like I will say, yes, there is I have optimized the fun out of the game. Certainly, I actually think that's something. I think a really good example of this is I enjoy whenever, you know, I'm actually trying things or playing the game. What I really don't like and I wouldn't actually mind if this went away, but I actually don't like Sims. I think Sims suck. Like I feel very strongly about Sims, and I feel like that's optimizing the fun out of the game in a way that if you didn't have Sims, what would the process of playing the game look like? You would just go through, you would try things, you would test things. You would probably come to the same conclusions that the Sims did, right, in terms of builds and whatnot. And you would read guides and like read, like as an end user, you would like probably still read guides and whatnot. But at the same time, it's not backed by like 100% certainty that this is going to be the correct build. This is going to be the best piece of gear, because you don't actually have that information. And I do think that Sims, I do think there is a way that players over optimize the fun out of the game. And I think that us as World of Warcraft players, we try to take the path of least resistance if at all possible. And that does lead us down the path of, you know, sometimes we optimize the fun out of things a little bit.
Well, okay, so Xyronic, to tack onto that, at what point does optimization stop adding fun and start replacing it? And has there been a tipping point for you that you've endured or experienced?
See, I'm a problem for this question because I love optimization. I will take every little point of advantage I will possibly get just to have whatever advantage over everyone else I can possibly get. But I do agree with the things Tettles was saying, right? Like there is a certain breaking point where it might be too much for most people. And honestly, like, I don't know if it's Sims that are the problem in particular, because Simcraft back in the day was actually kind of a pain to get up and running and like do proper Sims on yourself. I think it's kind of raid bots' fault for making it more easily accessible to everyone by putting it on a website that you can just put your info in and press the button on. You had to go through this weird download process, go through a whole bunch of options in a program to make Simcraft work before. Ease of access definitely made it a little more crazy. But no, personally, I don't think there's ever been a tipping point for me when it comes to optimization. I just love it.
Was there one for you, Tettles? You said you stepped away for Sod, is that right? Or I'm sorry, not after Sod, but after Abris?
Oh, I mean, that was like I was rating in Vesper at the time, and we were doing three character splits and stuff like that. And that shit was just burning me out a little bit more than anything else.
I think a good example. Oh, go ahead, Zorthas, if you had something to say.
Well, I think the optimization feels bad when you're doing something that doesn't feel right for like a rotation or something. Like if you're like overcapping resources and it doesn't feel like it's something that you should be doing, then it kind of does feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like just munching a proc or something, or just ignoring something. That's like the point where I think optimization can be bad. It's not bad every time. Like sometimes capping resources makes a class more interesting, but it's on a case by case basis.
I do think that like splits are a good example of like optimization can go too far. Like I think that splits are, I don't know if you guys necessarily hate them. I strongly do not like splits. Like I feel pretty strongly that splits are not very fun. It's kind of like the same thing with farm raiding. Everybody does raid farm, but I think that the extent of which players do farm raiding is probably a little bit too vast. Like I don't know why people have to log on week 25 of the patch to actually farm the raid anymore. Like, well, for what is the purpose?
I mean,
Like,
I think some of that boils down to just keeping a guild together and keeping that social component intact. But I don't want to speak out of turn. Zorthas, do you have a response to that as a raid leader?
I mean, I like raiding farm. I like showing up every week and doing raid. It's just I don't know, it's just nice to play the game. And farm is like you just think differently in farm. You kind of just go in and you play your class, and the bosses are kind of chill.
I do think it depends on the scale, though, right? Like some of these raids have been so difficult to farm. I mean, I think recently they've been doing a better job of giving you like deep farm level feel with the renown tracks and the turbo boost gear. But like for a while there, dude, it was like you farming Razageth. Holy shit! Like that is like a 10, 15 pull farm boss, and you're just like, this is the devil. And you had to kill Brood Twister before that. And you're just like, oh man, please, I just want out.
Jailer was the worst. I think we really struggled re-clearing that boss. It was like I think we killed it, and then the next like 6 weeks we only killed it once past then. We had like issues on the previous bosses, we had issues on Jailer itself. That was really bad. But now farm is really easy. They're like 15% buff and
Yeah.
turbo boost, and then some other buffs as well.
They definitely have made it better, and I think that's like pretty undeniable. I don't know. It's kind of like an interesting like cultural thing though, that everybody's always done farm, so everybody continues to do farm. But if you look at any other video game, after you would finish progression, why would you go back and do farm over and over again? It's kind of like a weird thing if you really step back and think about it. You're like, well,
yeah, I mean, I think this is
I think video games don't have 20-man groups.
Yeah.
The split conversation is really interesting in particular, right? Because I remember back at the very start of when splits became this huge thing, we would talk about how valuable it was to do extra splits. And like past 5 or 6 splits, the actual value you get out of every extra split is increasingly lower. Like we're talking literally like single digit percentage increases on individual raiders in your raid at that point. And also it's just subject to RNG of the right gear dropping in your particular split. But the problem is, like, especially when you have heroic weeks where your time spent doesn't matter, you're just going to do as many as you possibly can in the week, especially now that they can do like 3 or 4 splits at the same time using community members to fill out their raids. The top end guilds are going to do as much as they possibly can. That's definitely an optimization that has probably gotten a little too out of hands, particularly for the Race to World First guilds. But another one that I wanted to bring up, and I saw this in chat as well, is Augmentation Evoker in its current form. Having to have somebody outside of the raid spreadsheet out when you're going to be buffing every single person on every single cast of Ebonite, and then having that pop up on your WeakAuras as a timeline reminder, and like highlighting their bars saying you're buffing this person now and this person now. That's not healthy for the game, and that is, I guess, there's a reason they're reworking on augmentation for Midnight.
Yeah, I think all of this, kind of circling back to what Tettles, was communicating and whatnot, is it's a really good example of, like, you're not going to please everybody because everyone has different wants, desires, expectations. Like some people like farm, some people don't. Some people like, getting pushed to the limits. Some people don't. Some people like optimizing. Some people don't. I mean, we could list off a million different examples, but yeah. Like Tettles said, I'm glad I'm not a raid designer or class designer or anything designer, because I would probably be hated in the community with my ideas or lack thereof. So whatever. Zorthas, do you think that high end play has unintentionally raised baseline expectations in a way that made the game harder or less forgiving for your average players and groups? And if so, was that outcome avoidable, inevitable? What do you think?
And I don't I mean, I don't have experience like progging in an average group recently, but I mean, I would say there is an expectation. There's probably a new expectation to be made.
I mean,
I mean,
what do you think
maybe
about,
someone. Oh, wait, wait.
what do you think about pre-race world first, or like maybe even like pre-resilient key? Like I feel like there is a difference there, right?
Pre-race world first.
Yeah,
Like,
like before you had access to the information about what the race world first guilds were doing.
I didn't play then. Like when they didn't stream it, I did not play then.
Okay.
I've only ever played the game when they streamed Race World first, like any real capacity. But, I mean, the Rizilki thing is true. I do think people are like practicing way more in Rizilkis.
I want to interrupt you real quick, and then I want you to continue this train of thought. Of course, you just sent out, correct me if I'm wrong, a questionnaire, a poll about resilient keys, right?
Yeah, actually, released a video about it yesterday.
Yeah. Can you? I'll link that in the description below for anyone who wants to check this out. Can you give us a little TLDR real quick about what you found?
I think Rizilki is something that's like very good for people doing like mid-range keys, like 13 to 17, and then for people who are doing higher keys like 19 to 22, there are like a huge amount of different issues. But there are numerous issues about Rizil, and it's like a really weird topic because you have like thoughts of the general player base likes Rizil, but then at the same time, the general player base also wants more than Rizil. Like the depletion as a whole is just like a really like weird obstacle when you're pugging. But it kind of, if it didn't exist on like the very high keys, things would just like get really stale and degenerate, and it wouldn't really be fun to play the game.
That's interesting.
So like, I feel like there needs to be a balance now in Rizilkis of like that they need to make it better for the lower population of keys, and then they need to make Rizilkis more restrictive for the higher population.
Make sure you guys go check out that video. It was just linked in Twitch chat for anyone who's watching this live. And again, I'll have a link to his video. And again, everyone's YouTube and everything will be in the description. But go check out that video. I'll be interested to watch that after the show today. I'm sorry if did I interrupt anyone? Did anyone have anything they wanted to tack on before I move on to the next question? Want to make sure. All right, cool. Tettles. I want to know. Do you feel like there are any systems in the game right now that you can think of that you have gripes with that feel mandatory but not meaningful? And what makes something feel required without feeling rewarding?
Mandatory. I mean, I think that I think gearing and stats have actually gotten to the point where it's been feeling a little bit weird. Obviously, gearing is mandatory to a point. You have to make your character more powerful to be able to complete the content that you're looking to do. But then you have something on top of it, like turbo boost or whatever, where then gearing doesn't really feel meaningful, yet whenever you like look at sims, it feels like, oh, I'm getting kind of griefed by not having these pieces of gear. And I think that gearing has been like the biggest culprit of that for me, where it's like, oh, I have to do a bunch of Mythic Plus to grind out all this gear. Oh, I have to make sure I'm min-maxing my profession and my crafting in the biggest way possible. I have to then carve out some time to complain on Twitter about how hard mode Tazavesh is, and about how I'm not going to be able to complete that, and that's ruining my gameplay experience. Then I have to carve out some more time to complain on Twitter about how Mythic Plusers are oppressed compared to Mythic Raiders. And it's like, I think gearing has actually ran into this problem where it's like, it's super important because obviously, getting more power on your player is a valuable thing. But then it's like, whenever you get a piece of gear, when was the last time you guys felt like, oh, holy shit, this is BIS. I'm running around my house like, woohoo! I've got the best piece of gear I could possibly imagine. It's been a while, I'm sure, right? Like, I think for me, it was like Legion Legendaries. I remember got like a BIS Legion Legendary, and I'm like running around my college apartment. But at the same time, if Legion Legendaries came back, I'd be pretty mad. So I don't really know if there's like a good solution.
You got the helm as your first one, right?
No, I got bracers and then the reverse execute belt. But those were both damage increase.
Those are both good. They weren't Sephu's or Pridas, so you were happy.
Yeah, I was not running into but at the same time, it's like now gear, it all kind of feels the same. Everybody's got their 4 set, so thus nobody gets their 4 set early on. Although, if you look back at Sepulchre, people who got their 4 set early on probably felt pretty good, but then the people who didn't, they were apathetic and they were like, "Why play the game?" So it's kind of a weird. I think that to me is probably the biggest example of that from like personal experience. I don't know how Blizzard would even begin to fix it because it's kind of like the. I understand why they curbed it back a bunch because whenever you have stuff that's like super polarizing like that, the people who don't have it you're worried about them just completely quitting on you. Like Fire Act Legendary, I think is a good example of that. They added BLP to it, but I remember I had a friend who was just like, "Why log in? Why play? I don't have the Legendary." And it's just like, It is not
I think they've gotten pretty good about making things making mandatory things actually do something for your account. I think most of the gripes that I've seen with most of the problems in the game right now are people feeling like they have to do something to get the reward from it when they don't necessarily want to, right? The biggest thing, and Tettles alluded to this a little bit, is Mythic Plusers feeling like they have to raid in order to have the best gear possible to push keys on. That's not something that I think should be a thing. I think Mythic Plusers should have some way to get gear that's better for Mythic Plus than the raid gear.
I don't know, man. I feel like at some point too, you just kind of have to play. You have to worry about BS a little bit less, and you just have to worry about playing more. No,
but I mean, but should Mythic Plusers? I mean, that's kind of the point. Obviously, should people who only care about and want to engage a Mythic Plus field like they have to raid as well to get? I mean, that is the point you're making, right, Xyronic?
Yeah, exactly, and it goes both ways. Like raiders also have to do Mythic Plus for gear at the start of the expansion, at the start of every tier, rather. I mean, I don't know. I personally don't have a problem with it, but I know that there are people who would rather just sit in Mythic Plus all day and don't want to bother with raiding, and that's just something that they'll have to deal with until Blizzard comes up with a solution for it, or they don't.
If they even
in my eyes, at the end of the day, it's like an MMO game, and I feel like you should be rewarded for doing different things. I think the question is just like how much is it too much right now? Yeah. Also, on the mandatory but not meaningful, I think that the most literal interpretation of that is embellishments. Those are mandatory right now. You do need to have 2 embellishments on because it's just better. But they also provide such insignificant DPS that you would barely notice if you didn't have them. Like the choice between embellishments is irrelevant. You just run any of the embellishments that aren't completely terrible and probably just do the same damage. But you still need to have the 2 crafted items that's locking up 2 gear slots. So it's always like the same gear slots as well.
What even happened with crafted gear that it got to this point, right? Like, because even though everyone kind of ran the same things back in Dragonflight, at least they were cool, right? Like Elemental Lariat was actually a pretty big DPS increase in the first tier, and then Spore Cloak in the second tier was actually like really good for Mythic Plus and just good defensive value. And then after that, they were like, now let's just make everyone use baseline stat ones that aren't that good.
They stopped innovating. Like, I mean, I think it's one of those things that like if you just leave us with the exact same systems, even if those were good systems, it's not very cool. It's kind of like Faded. The reason that Faded wasn't cool the second time. It's kind of like Turbo Boost. The reason that Turbo Boost wasn't cool the second time. If you just give us the same thing over and over again, we're just not going to be super engaged. Unless you play Classic, which in that case, you're super stoked for TBC to come out the 3rd time or whatever it is.
Dude, Classic Fresh is going to really
that chest.
They did make embellishments stop scaling. They don't scale with high level anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Silk and Lining scaled with item level on your piece, but now these current ones don't. But I think it's more just like all of your gear slots are locked up. But I think the bigger issue with gearing is that it's solved. Like, you know what to do. You know that you're supposed to, as a caster, you're supposed to save 2 of your sparks and craft a 2-hander. And you're as a rogue, you're supposed to always craft a dagger first. And this is like, and I think that knowing what to do and it being solved is a problem. And
I hate the weapon crafting so much. It's so bad that weapon drops, you get an early weapon drop, you're sad now.
Yeah.
You used to be really happy if you got a staff from your first vault or something. Now you get a weapon and it's like, oh, I've already crafted one.
Dude, I got the heroic staff off of gosh, what's that boss? I want to call him Soulbinder, but I don't think that's his name. Okay, yeah, Soulbinder. During Heroic Week, I got that staff, and I was like, wow, this is sick. And then I start looking at the Sims, and I was like, I'm still supposed to craft a weapon? Like, what is this? Like, why?
Oh, that's pretty dumb. We have a couple of questions left in this topic, and we're going to do viewer questions, and we'll get you guys out of here. Thank you so much for being here today. Xyronic, I'm going to throw this next one to you. We've been talking about this a lot, so feel free to tack on any more that we maybe haven't already talked about. But with all this talk about optimization and what's good and what's bad and whatnot, is it Blizzard's responsibility to protect players from over optimization, or is that just an unavoidable byproduct of competitive play? I mean, like, where do you think that line actually sits?
If it was Blizzard's job to prevent players from optimizing, the game would be unbelievably boring. Like, no spec would have any nuance. There would be nothing to solve in the game. Everything would be pre-solved for you. So I don't think that's really personally something that they would they would worry about. I think the only thing that they can do is do a better job balancing. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? Like, when it comes to like optimizing around like a raid comp or a mythic plus comp, class balance is really important for that. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. Like, they've actually gotten a lot better about class balancing. There aren't really that many outliers on the top end or low end. They've really kind of squeezed everything together, and it really comes down to just who happens to be on the top side of tuning for Race to World First guilds. I think that they've done most of what they can do on that front.
Zorthas, do you think that most players today are actually playing the game that Blizzard has designed, or do you think that a lot of the choices, the game itself, how we are engaging with it has been shaped by guides and logs and tier lists and community expectations and so on and so on? And like, how wide does that gap feel right now?
Well, the players shifted away from the game that Blizzard designed ages ago, and now Blizzard is shifting towards the game that the players play. I think Blizzard is now designing the game for the way the players are playing it. Back in like Shadowlands, they weren't. Like Covenants, for example, is something that Blizzard designed, and the players were not playing that game. But I think they learned from that, and they are like definitely designing around the game that we play now. Like they're putting a lot more effort into M+. Like previously, they would not consider M+ in balancing. It would just be like an afterthought. Wouldn't really do much to dungeons either. It was just kind of there. Over this expansion, they've become a lot more in tune to balancing around it. Like you'll actually see classes in like PTRs will get balanced with regards to their power and M+ a lot.
Tettles, do you think that the average player genuinely wants to optimize? Or are they mostly just trying to avoid being wrong or excluded from their Mythic Plus team, the raid team, pugs, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think that average player, obviously subjective. I think the average player doesn't care, but I think the average player who you reach a level where you start to do research. The average, let's say, class Discord enjoyer or something like that.
That's
right?
a fair take. Yep.
I think that realistically, the thing that you're trying to do the most is just like not hold your group back. I think realistically, God, I think there was a video that came out and it talked about why it's impolite to suck at World of Warcraft. I think that was maybe the title of the video. And I think that video is a really good representation about like the average player experience, where it's like, you don't really care to be groundbreaking. You just don't want to feel like you're holding your group back. And thus, you'll download 1,000 WeakAuras packs. Thus, you'll do you'll try to figure out how to do the most damage possible, and you'll grind for this stupid piece of gear that's like a 0.3% damage increase, because you just feel like that is what your responsibility as a player to your guild, to your raid team, to your Mythic Plus group is. Because ultimately it's not a single player game, right? As much as players in 2026 want to play this as a single player game, it really isn't. There is a burden of responsibility on you doing right by the other people that are in your group.
Yeah, that's an awesome. If you guys don't have any clue what that video is, it's a really well made video. It's like an hour or two long, and it's really well made. The gentleman makes a lot of good points. I might actually wind up linking that in my description now that you brought it up.
That was a good video. I resonated a lot with it. Like, one of the key takeaways, I remember him talking about like Ellesmere and the gunshot sound WeakAuras, and he was like, does anybody really want this in their game? And the answer is no. Nobody wants that in their game. And it's like, why do you have it? It's unequivocally powerful, right? And I think that's kind of the point that he was making. It's like, the reason that players use it isn't for themselves, because it is really annoying. It's Zyra was saying earlier about turning off the TTS on the WeakAuras packs. It is really annoying and overstimulating to have that much audio clutter. But would I rather have audio clutter, or would I rather be the reason that my guild wiped? And it's just like, I think I'd rather have the audio clutter.
Absolutely.
The audio thing. I was playing a lot of beta and like without add-ons with any like kind of audio alert. And then you go back on live, went and did some live keys, and there's like insane noise pollution. It's like I was on the farm and then I moved back into the city, and there's like sound everywhere.
Dude, I'm not.
There's like sounds I didn't even realize were happening. Like I just
so
like
you're
filtered them
saying-
out. Now I'm noticing them again.
Midnight is greener pastures. Then we're gonna be in good hands.
Oh, that's actually a really funny take, but it's also a fair take.
I think it's somebody was like, oh, I enjoy all these sounds the other day. I was like, dude, they shouldn't even exist in the game. I think the biggest problem that I have with them is that they're external sounds. It's like an air horn going off and then a gunshot and then and then swords are clanging in the background. You're just like, what is going on? Like literally, where are all these sounds coming from?
Oh my goodness. It's ironic as a fan of optimization, and I feel you. Has optimization quietly become the real end game of WoW more than rating and Mythic Plus? And if that's kind of how you see it, is that healthy for the game? Like, I like it, you like it, but I mean, at what point is enough enough?
No, it hasn't become the real end game. No, I mean the people that have gotten to the point where optimization is the end game for them, we're talking about like the very top of the top, like maybe the top 20 guilds in the world can get to the point where like, okay, we're optimizing everything. We know what we need to do. We're literally trying to squeeze every single drop of juice we can out of our specs to play the game. For most players, just getting into Mythic is the end game. Just getting into like the double digits in Mythic Plus is the end game. We're talking like
Just getting cutting edge.
Just getting
right?
well, I mean, cutting edge itself is really hard to get. Like it's single digit percentage of the population, right? So it's not to the point where optimization is a problem. It's a problem specifically for the people that get there, maybe. But that's such a small amount of people in the game that it's not a problem that Blizzard has to worry about.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I also think I think optimization is like easier now. I feel like gear is kind of like templated, and you can like with dynars, etc. You can make a character and you can just have whatever gear you want. So instead of like running all the unique sims and like working out what's best for your character based off what you've got in votes and whatever, you kind of can just like, at least in this patch, you kind of can just like copy someone. Like, so many of your slots are just locked up in things that you have to run. I feel like everyone's just running the same character at the moment.
We have some, number one, thank you guys so much for sitting down today and chewing through this with me. I really do appreciate it. We have some really good viewer questions today. And viewer questions are always hit or miss depending upon who's watching and how this conversation hits them. But I want to start off with a question from a gentleman named Bruised Dog. Thank you for being here, Bruised Dog. He wants to know, and this is not directed at any one of you, so feel free to jump in if this speaks to you. Do you think high-end WoW requires talent or effort from players? And what did you do specifically to improve at a consistent rate?
I think this is probably one of the more effort-based games I've played. Very, it's not like it's not like you're playing a shooter or something like that. Like, a lot of World of Warcraft actually kind of comes down to doing research beforehand and having a pretty good understanding of where you're supposed to be going and what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I don't think it requires talent at all. It's more just how much effort you put into learning what it is you want to do in the game, whether that's playing with a team in Mythic Plus and being good at pressing your CC and communicating with your team, or in raiding, being optimal with your DPS rotation and never dying. I mean, putting effort in and researching what you want to do is important, but I don't think there's any specific talent that you can have for it, unless you have like really good reaction speed or like you're really good at problem solving quickly. Like, those are pretty unique skills that not everyone in the raid has to have.
I think WoW is the easiest game to play at the high end. I feel like any other game, if you want to be like near the top, you kind of need to be like naturally skilled and talented, like fast reaction time, etc. I feel like in WoW you can kind of just make up for it by just being there and reliable and just taking things seriously. I also think the third skill is social skills. I think like having a strong social, being good socially is like as important in WoW as being good at the game. I feel like if you're just like there and you're silent and you can't like talk to anyone is like kind of bad.
Why are you laughing, Tettles?
World of Warcraft players need to have strong social skills.
I do agree with what you're saying, Zorthas. I do. I think that a person who can sit down, have a conversation, communicate clearly, effectively, calmly, explain themselves, not take things personally, etc., 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 etc. I think that's very important. I definitely agree with that.
One of the biggest questions you get as like a Mythic Plus streamer, and I'm sure Zorthas tells you get this question all the time, is like, how do I find a group of people to play with, to do high keys with? And it's networking.
Yeah,
it's finding people you like playing with and saying, hey, let's play again sometime. And that some reason that's really hard for a lot of WoW players.
I made a video back in BFA titled something to the effect of like how to, naturally increase your rated.io score or something like that. And my biggest point in the video was, as you're running Mythic Plus, if you're pugging, which a lot of us do, if you encounter someone who plays intelligently, communicates efficiently, etc., add them to your friends list. And I got so many comments from people saying, you're just saying just make friends with people? Yes, like literally.
Yes.
Yes, that is one of the easiest ways to consistently improve at Mythic Plus, is to play with the same people and play with people who you align with in terms of goals. And I don't even, I'm monologuing at this point in time, but yes.
Zorthas, I have a question. In your poll, would you have said that you primarily pug or play in coordinated groups? What would you have answered to that? Because I sat there more often than not. I don't have a team. I just play whenever I get invited. But is that pugging? I don't really know.
I mean, I've genuinely pugged a lot in the last 2 seasons. And it's honestly kind of annoying because people kind of think I don't pug.
People think that streamers don't pug at all.
Yeah, like I got in like this tier. I got invited one day to fill in for like Drogo's group, and we did 21s there. And like the rest of the season, I literally like sat in LFG. I got invited to groups from people that like knew me, but they were never like it was never just like, oh, we were actually pushing as a group. This is the plan. It was just like one random key with people who were just like good at the game. It's I don't know. I've been pugging a lot, like actual like proper pugs in the last 2 seasons. I would have probably said pug to that. But I mean I have experience in a lot of scenarios. I have experience doing like World 300 push keys, experience doing like top 10 push keys. I had experience. I was like we were like world first for a while in season 1, and now last 2 seasons I've actually just been like playing. This in like season 2 I was like playing off meta, just pugging. Of course, I'll never have like the true pug experience because people know me. But it's like it's definitely like interesting. I don't really like pugging. It's very it's very. Yeah, it's like you just get groups that are just like, it's just obviously not going to work.
Yeah. Pugging, I feel like there's actually kind of a gradient to it. There's like pugs of people that you know that just kind of invited you to play with them, and you're like, okay, cool. And then there's pugs of people who you're not in voice with, you don't know, that are from LFG that you're never going to see again, and you're like, this is the worst. And it's like, I think if more people played with, the other type of pug where it's like, these are people that you don't necessarily know too well, but you're in voice with them. You're trying to actually, coordinate what's going on in the group and stuff like that. I feel like the gameplay experience would be a lot better for most people.
The next question comes from Fang Bosson. He asks, with the pruning of abilities and cooldowns, will the single button assistant, the rotational assistant, one button stuff, will that allow mid-tier players to progress higher in Midnight? Asking for a friend.
Does it still have like the? I haven't paid attention to this at all. Actually, going into midnight, does it still have like the GCD lock on it that makes your GCD longer when you use it?
I think so, yeah.
Eh. Depends on what you define as mid. If we're talking like heroic to early mythic, yeah, probably. But for high end mythic progression, I don't think that's really a viable way to play the game.
Agreed, yeah. I think it's jumping on an alt. I think it's a fantastic tool to get your feet wet, to get in there and acclimate, right? But there comes a certain point in time to where you just need to learn your rotation. If you're trying to progress and move on from whatever, you definitely want to learn your rotation, of course. Were you going to say something, Tettles?
I think you can get the rank 1 title or get it cutting edge with the 1-button rotation. I don't think that people will use it because it's, broadly speaking, via the community, pretty frowned upon to be using stuff like the OBR and whatnot. But I actually think it's quite powerful, just in terms of like a tool.
Wait, you said you think you can get the 0.1% title with 1-button rotation?
People are bad at this game. I think that people don't really understand the scope of how bad players are at WoW sometimes.
I think it's a hot take. I mean, title that's up there, man. I'm not saying you can't do well. Like I use a 1-button rotation on a Mistweaver in like a +12 and it's fine. But 0.1 for that's hot. I don't know, man. I don't know if I agree with that.
I mean, if you look at it, you have to do like 1.7 key levels below maximum on average at the moment. Usually it's actually easier, but now you have to do like 1.7 key levels below the maximum for rank 1 title. So if one person in your group is taking like a 20 to 30% DPS loss,
It's 15 to 25 ish, depending on.
Yeah, so you're only losing like at most 10% DPS. Like it's like theoretically your damage is still going to be fine if like one guy is in the group using the 1-button rotation. Maybe if the entire group was, probably possible.
Yeah, the problem then is going to go back to the previous question where how good are your social skills? Can you get a group of people to carry you at that point, knowing that you're using the 1-button rotation? Technically,
I don't know.
You can.
I think the 1-button rotation is actually pretty good. I did a video last season whenever the 1-button rotation came out, and I did 1 key level below a title level key in a pug, and I topped DPS in the group using the 1-button rotation. And it's like, all right, like, come on, it is ridiculous. But I don't know. I think that there's so much that comes down to playing World of Warcraft that's beyond just hitting your
Numbers,
buttons and yeah, exactly. Like, I think that like wipe prevention in communication skills in Mythic Plus is like a way bigger deal than do you do 15% more damage unless you're playing Enhancement Shaman more than Season 1, which in that case then it matters a lot. But yeah, that's about it.
Moriarty has a really good question here. He asks, I assume it's a he or she asks, what do you feel your ideal fight length should be around when it comes to a Mythic Raid encounter?
7 minutes.
I think it's like an end boss versus like mid boss kind of question, right? Like an end boss, probably 10 minutes max. I don't really like stuff that's like, I don't like 12-minute encounters personally, but yeah, if it's like a really short end boss, I think I'm not super thrilled. It's like if we were strolled up and it was like a 5.5-minute end boss, I'd be kind of mad.
Yeah, no, you're right. For most encounters, I think 7 is like the perfect benchmark. 6.5 to 7, because that covers all cooldowns, right? No class feels left out by that cooldown window.
Yeah. But what was Sludge Fist?
Sludge Fist was like, I think it was right around that 6.5.
Was it 6 that the boss hit the wall and then?
Let me check really quick.
And they had like 10 seconds to cover. I mean, I'm
pretty sure it was around that 6.5 to 7 minute mark.
Yeah, I think the last charge would be at like 550 or something. It was like 70 seconds between the first one being at 50 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, I think that I think the patchwork fights have the ability to be kind of shorter and be okay. If it's because I think that there can run into a problem where it lacks replayability or lacks depth if it's too short.
I think the correct time for a frog boss is like 6 to 8 minutes. But I think like having a fight that just lasts a little bit longer with like a lot of phases is nice as well. And then I think end boss, like, I don't think an end boss should be below 10 minutes. I definitely don't think an end boss on prog should be below 10 minutes. Maybe 9's okay. I would like to see like sometimes they do a 12-minute end boss. You have like 2 lusts. I know people don't like long fights, but I feel like if every fight that is an end boss is just always 10 minutes, I think it's a bit stale. Which I think every end boss has been 10 minutes recently.
Yeah. What do you think about pull count? Like, what's like your optimal pull count for like an end boss?
I think just 300 is the best typically.
Yeah.
It's
Like
not
250 to
too,
350.
It's not too hard. I think like 500 is like excessive.
I'm battling Kill Jaden again.
To me, yeah, I was about to say Mythic Kill Jaden comes to mind. Yeah, I liked Mythic Kill Jaden. I can't remember what the guild I was in, how many pulls that took, but I'm not world first, obviously. So
Could you imagine how different the raid, like that raid, would have looked if we streamed Race to World first back then?
oh my god,
Dude,
night
that
and day,
boss
I'm
would have
sure.
been a nightmare. Have you seen the video that Method posted about Kill
Yeah.
Jaden specifically? It's like a 5-minute video of the changes that happened in the first few days of progression, where like they nerfed half of the mechanics by 50%. It was like Razageth, but in phase 1.
That's crazy. I don't know if I've ever seen that video. Did that come out years ago? I assume.
Yeah,
it
a
was
few years ago.
10 years ago or something.
I probably did.
I
at
watched it
some
like a
point in
month or
time.
2 ago. I mean, I never actually played that boss, but I never played that boss, and it looks ancient. It looks like I'm watching a different.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean, that was right when WeakAuras started picking up, so I'm sure things were definitely designed much differently back then. Because I think power auras was still that was at the end of MOP, is that right? When did WeakAuras start really hitting mainstream? Was it WoW?
WeakAuras really came into their own in MOP in particular, but like guilds didn't have specific people designed to make their own WeakAuras
Right.
until probably late Legion. So yeah, it was right around that time.
I remember the end of Legion. You guys remember Fallen Avatar? Everybody did, instead of having like an auto assignment, like you're soaking next, you're soaking next. Everybody's guild had a list that was on the left side of their screen, and you could see other players' debuffs, and that way you knew that if you were supposed to be next or not, and it didn't tell you that you were supposed to be next. And it's just like looking back on stuff like that, like Zorthas said, it just looks ancient. It is crazy to think about that we played like that.
It just makes me wonder what Midnight's going to look like. For better, for worse, good or bad. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be, either way, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. I had one more question in mind that I want to get you guys out of here because we've been here for a couple hours now. That was a question toward Tettles, but I think it was a joke. We'll skip that one. Okay, this is a question from Lightbulb. Do you think Blizzard can do a better job of making specs not one build meta? And he goes on to ask or clarify, making different play style and talents even on the DPS meters, rather than you have to pick these talents to be viable. So I'm reading what they wrote. So I'm just trying to analyze it as he writes it out. Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
I guess the question, the first reaction of that is that true? I mean, don't.
Well, I mean, I can use BM Hunter as an example. Didn't
you play Pack Leader and Dark Ranger?
Pack Leader's fine, but Dark Ranger is numerically, objectively more damage. But they are both perfectly adequate builds. I mean, you're not gonna suck if you play Pack Leader. But I mean, I guess he does clarify for the meta. Like, is there, with you guys all playing Elemental, is there one Elemental build at the high end that you have to play to be completely optimized?
You can change utility talents, but that's kind of it, to be honest.
Ellie's pretty locked in at the moment. The hero talent. The hero talents are like very weird between classes. There are a lot of classes that have one dungeon talent and one raid talent. That is what Ellie is right now.
Mm-hmm.
There are classes that have one talent that is good in everything, and the other talent is like completely ignored. Like Ret is that in that scenario. There are I think a few classes this expansion have had points where both hero talents were actually like viable in both settings. Like Enhanced and Shaman in Season 2 was very good. Where like both hero talents were viable in all scenarios. That's like, I feel like Blizzard needs to have like extreme care for that. I don't think it's like realistic or attainable. But then on the topic of like talents in general, I think talents can in the spec tree, like throughput talents can actually be flexible, but they have to make the talents worse for it. Like you can't have like strong talents and flexible talents at the same time, really.
Okay. One last question. Just listen, I just want to ask a question. There's no judgment here. There's maybe a little bit of judgment, just one judgment, or there's just one question. Tettles, you're playing a shaman right now. Is your Bloodlust keybound, or do you click it?
Mine's bound.
All right. Xyronic, what about you?
Yeah, mine's bounds.
Zorthas, what about you?
Mine is bound, but I used to click it, and
Right.
I think it was a mistake that I used to click it.
I accidentally fat fingered it during phase 1 of Dimensius, and I took it off. I had to take it off my bars.
See, that's what I'm saying, man. You guys are crazy having it bound. Oh my god.
I was very scared.
What is
You're
your bind?
insane.
What is your
X.
bind? X?
X.
You don't even have
Yeah.
a modifier on it?
Oh my
No
god.
wonder you click it in phase 1.
But so
was
this
Mine
one
on Shift H.
Okay, mine's Shift V, so it's kind of hard to hit. Okay, but listen, back when I first started playing Mage and Shaman, my Time Warp bind was 5,
Oh my god.
and my filler is 4.
My
insane.
my stone bulwark totem is Shift X, and then my lust is X.
I can't believe that, man. Oh my god. It's so right now you're telling me on live it's bound to X Bloodlust? Your Bloodlust is bound to X.
Yeah,
All right.
just don't lust at
I'll-
the wrong time.
All right. All right. Well, thank you
Yes,
guys
sir.
for being here today. I really do appreciate it. I want to go around the table one last time, one last question to get us out of here. Tettles, are you optimistic? Are you worried? How do you feel going into midnight with the direction that WoW's heading right now?
I mean, I feel like I'm normally pretty optimistic just about the game in general. I still enjoy playing World of Warcraft. I think a lot of people are like heavily dooming. I'm definitely not in that camp. I do think I'm optimistic, and I'm really excited about just like seeing the new content and enjoying the game. I am a little bit pessimistic about. I'm worried about the game feeling a bit stale, kind of like as we talked about a bit earlier about. I worry that not enough is changing, but that's something that we'll have to wait and see. But I think if I had to classify myself, I'd say I'm pretty optimistic.
Xyronic, what about you, sir?
I would say generally I'm pretty optimistic, but I'm always that way when it comes to WoW, right? Like Tettles,
I feel that too.
I just enjoy new content. I like doing new things. When it comes to WoW in particular, I'm more tied to the community aspect of it, right? Like playing this game is kind of my job as a proxy to casting. I like logging in every week and raiding with my team, regardless of what the content is. So unless they like decide to remove raiding or Mythic Plus from the game, I think in general the future of WoW is pretty optimistic for me.
Zorthas, same question, of course, sir.
I am optimistic. I think everything will it's a shake-up, but I think after a month or whatever, everyone will just be playing the same game and be used to it, and it won't be much of a contention. I am fearful though about the community perception and like potentially like misinformation as it's spreading about like, oh, they're removing add-ons or whatever. I am scared there's like going to be a large portion of the community that just like logs on, their add-ons don't work. They just like don't want to play the game, and they just don't play the game or whatever.
Dude, I met somebody who recognized me IRL the other day, and they told me they hadn't played the game for a little bit, and then the first thing they said was, "So Midnight's ruined, right? They're deleting all the add-ons." That's like, I feel like the widespread rhetoric about what's happening with the game is Blizzard's deleting add-ons. The game is going to be worse, and it's that actually caught me off guard. I was like, wait, what? It was like, wait a second, you think that add-ons are getting deleted and the game's going to be worse? Interesting. That's the large, more broader rhetoric about what's actually going on with Midnight.
I feel like I can count so many times on my stream that I've explained that they're not actually removing add-ons; they were just restricting them, and they didn't actually like remove WeakAuras, but the WeakAuras devs didn't. It's been so. I feel like the perception of the expansion is the like number one thing that is going to have an impact on this expansion, and I really hope it doesn't just like end up being people think the expansion shit and it's shit. Also, I will say I think pre-patch is going to affirm some of these thoughts, because we're kind of going to be playing the Midnight classes just without Apex talents and tier sets.
Oh,
So,
dude, add-ons are going to be a disaster on launch too, because okay, if you haven't played a bunch of Midnight beta, there are so many add-ons on the beta that just they're let's say poorly designed. That's probably the nicest way of describing it, because we got away from professional developers creating add-ons, right? And now we have these kind of, they're brand new, right? It's just been taking development time, and they're just not ready for the expansion to come out, and then you're gonna have to use them, and they're just gonna throw 1,000 Lua errors. Like, I was using like ArcUI and Tweaks UI the other day, and they just have dependency issues, and they just like throw Lua errors on top of one another from interactions with one another, and it's like those things were gonna get resolved probably at some point, but they're just not ready yet.
Yeah, I think some people are in for a wake-up call. I mean, I use a ton of add-ons in WeakAuras, so I'll be adjusting my UI for at least a month leading up to the release. Man, thank you guys so much for being here. Let's go around one more time. Tettles, tell people where they can find you. Tell people what's going on in your world, in your corner, and get us out of here, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, twitch.tv/Tettles, and check out my YouTube channel. Also, check out The Bench. Watch The Bench podcast.
Yes. By the way, yeah, please. I will link to that as well down below. I love shining a spotlight on anyone out there who's making content and that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for being here today, man. I really, really do appreciate it. Xyronic, same thing, buddy. Where can people find you? What's going on? Get us out of here.
When I do make content, it's at twitch.tv/Xyronic. If you want to watch me play some TFT and occasionally play WoW.
I was about to say you were streaming earlier today, man.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't do YouTube so much, but it's just mostly Twitch.
Hey, look, it's THD. What's up, THD? Hold on, he linked something. Let's see what this is here. Zorthas, while I look at this random Imgur image, can you go ahead and let people know where they can find you and what's going on, please?
I'm Zorthas on Twitch, Zorthas on YouTube, except I have a space on YouTube. I don't know. Should I remove that?
Yes! Yes, you should remove that.
I kind of like it, though.
Is it at the end?
Okay.
Is it Zorthas space at the end?
No, it's just Zor space Thas. Like at some point, I think they like get you to put in your full name, and I just put first name Zor and second name Thas, and it just automatically YouTube. I never change it.
How does it work whenever people like look you up on? It doesn't mess with your search engines, the SEO stuff, right?
And I've searched Zorthas, and it's fine.
All right, it shows up. Yeah, I see it right now. It's just showing up as you. I mean, it's probably fine, but it is troll.
Probably should. But it's just funny because people will refer to me as Zor space that. I like look at the classes or something. Yo, I watched the video that Zor space Thas as opposed to.
That's amazing. Well, I'll make sure everything's linked properly down below. Please, guys, go follow these guys. Go subscribe to these guys. Go support these guys. If you want to watch high-end play across the board, these three are definitely up there. Zorthas, you'll be streaming your raid leading, is that correct? Going into midnight?
Yeah, probably.
All right, please make sure you guys go watch these guys do Mythic Plus and raiding. I promise you'll learn some stuff. Thank you guys for being here. We're gonna get you out of here. Go follow these guys. Click the links below. Episode 11 will be next week. That is what, the 18th. I don't have guests to announce yet. I mean, I do, but I just want to make sure they're locked in before I announce them. So you can expect that on my Twitter. Go follow me. I'm BrutallStatic everywhere. And that's a wrap, gentlemen. Round of applause for you guys. You're awesome. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you guys on the next one. My name's Brutal, and we appreciate you. And that is a wrap on episode 10 of Brutally Honest, a WoW podcast. We are 10 episodes into this thing, and I'm genuinely having a good time each week. Thank you guys for being here and supporting the show and just hanging out and having fun. I love the interaction, love the questions that are coming in. We're getting more and more each week, so please keep up the good work on your end. As I mentioned at the very top of the show, during the show, multiple times, go follow these guys. Go hang out with them, go subscribe to them, and please, if you feel so inclined, do the same for me. Click the follow button, go follow me on Twitch, subscribe to me on YouTube. You know the drill, man. But midnight is right around the corner, so buckle up. Good or bad, highs and lows, whatever it winds up being for you, for us collectively, it's not far off. So feel free to come hang out on Twitch, like I've been mentioning, and ask questions. I'm actually, real quick, I have locked in. I am back to playing a hunter for midnight. I have recently joined a guild. I'll be trialing with them a couple of nights a week. Very much looking forward to that. So if you want to watch me raid in midnight on my hunter, you get the opportunity. Congratulations. But otherwise, come hang out on Twitch on the reg, streaming 4 to 5 days a week in the morning and afternoon central time zone. So my name is Brutal. Go follow me on BrutallStatic everywhere. Go follow these guys. Check the YouTube description. See you for episode 11.